Welcome to this episode of the Women in Technology Spotlight. Today I have with me Stephanie Jakoubi. She's a security specialist at SBA Research. She's also the co-founder of the Sec4Dev conference. She's a woman in tech, passionate about cybersecurity, and a speaker and moderator. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, Ronka.
Stephanie, it's a pleasure to have you. Let's kick it off with you telling me a little bit about yourself, about your background, about who you are, please.
I live in Vienna. I have 2 kids. Both of them are in school now. And I love mountains and hiking and the freedom when you stand at the top of a mountain.
Very nice. So you have 2 kids and they're at school, which means you are one of those women who had to juggle both family and kids and everything throughout the past few months during the pandemic, right?
Yes. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah, I can imagine. So let's talk a little bit about how you became a woman in tech. So what is your background in education? What did you do? What kind of school did you go to? Did you go to university and all these little details?
So I I had an education for catering and cooking. So it's called in Austria HBLA or HLB. And from the start, I think it was the 2nd semester, first class, I just wanted to change class, change school and doing something more logical, math related, but I stayed all the 5 years. And afterwards, I started at FH Hagenberg and I studied software engineering. And I was so glad to be there. And the first week was just incredible. And seeing so many types of logic, learning new languages, which I do understand. And I'm definitely not a language person. So I always struggled with English and French, but Tour Pascal was something totally different. And I loved it. So yes, it's a couple of years ago. So I started software engineering. And then I did a lot of internships and I started at SBA Research and I stayed there till now. So 11 years now. And a couple of years ago, I started my master's in information security management, which put all the security things I learned or I saw at work together to a big picture.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And HBLA is a very, very female kind of education here in Austria. There's a lot of women who have this background where they learn how to run a household, how to cook, how to sew. So that's a very, very big discrepancy between that and what you're doing now. And it would interest me, since you said it didn't interest you from the beginning, why did you choose going there, or were you made to go there? Was it suggested that you do that? That's, tell me a bit.
Yeah. Honestly, my parents chose it. So, and I'm born in November, so I always was one of the older ones, and I just didn't want to lose a year. I mean, now it would have to pass to switch school, but I stayed.
Yeah,
and I always loved math, so I think I was the only one who finished in. Or had I don't know how do you call it, at Abitur. I had one in math and I loved it. And it was just so much fun.
So that's so interesting. I mean, I assumed that your parents recommended that you choose this school. Obviously, that's not, from what you're telling me, it's not something you would have chosen. And that brings me to the question, what is your family like? Do you have brothers and sisters? What do your parents do?
I have a little brother and he went to HTL, so for Maschinenbau, English, robotics, I think. And my dad is actually an architect, or he studied something like architecture, and my mom is a social worker. So I have something from both of them, because that's what I love about my job as well, that it's logic. And also at the same time, communication, bringing people together, bringing them on the same page and bringing forward and making an impact. So I honestly have no idea why my parents chose that. But now being a parent, I have to admit it's very, and I mean, my kids are my daughter is 9, so we have to choose the next school next year, but it's not that big of a step. It's hard.
Yeah.
To find the right school and for your kids. So I mean, they did their best, but I ended up where I wanted to be. So
yeah,
it's fine.
That's the good thing about the whole thing, that the journey took you where you're supposed to be. So those HBLAs, they're very, very female schools. Usually there aren't a lot of men there. And I assume that changed when you moved to the FH Hagenberg. It was not just the topic that changed. I guess it was also the gender balance that changed when you went there, right?
It did. And one good thing is that we had machine typing, which is good now. And I also did this ETCLS, this where you learn a lot about Microsoft Office, basically. But it helped afterwards to just can work with the tools. And I mean, you need it. You code, but you have to write your exercises. Then you put it into Word, and you have to use Excel and stuff like that. So that wasn't that bad. Yeah, and the gender gap switched, and it was so nice and so fine to have finally not so many women around, I have to admit. But a friend of mine, she asked me the same question, or a similar question last week. I think for me, it was not that big of a difference to have so many men colleagues or students around me, because we were there for the same reason. So it was not the gender. What was important, it was that we all loved coding and being there and learning something about programming and databases and implementing stuff. So it's somehow, yeah, no, I really enjoyed it.
So you said two things, basically. Not everything that you learned in the HBLA was for nothing, obviously. I mean, of course, there's a lot of stuff that you learned there. I have some friends who also went to this school, and I always envy them because they actually know to do certain things and that I don't, like probably cut an onion. But there's also other stuff that you learned that you could use afterwards when you went to the Fachhochschule, right? So that's a good thing to understand, that it's not necessarily a waste of time to go to another school. You can learn some skills that you can later apply to where you're going. And also think it's really great that you say that it didn't make a difference that there were so many men, that you were you have this common ground of being in love with coding. So this means that you did not feel out of place going to this school, right?
I mean, it was a huge switch from having one guy in the class, and then being, I think we were 45 students and 7 women. But it was fine. So for me, it doesn't make really a difference. But what I found was interesting, that I think especially in the IT and development, that then sometimes when you have this huge group of men and some women, that the women want to adapt. So they also like try to wear the same things, and jeans and hoodies and big shirts and stuff like that. But that wasn't what I experienced. So it's also fine to be you and be a woman and studying software engineering or something like technical. You don't have to change the outside who you are.
So you don't have to lose your identity to be part of IT.
No.
That's what you're saying.
No.
That's really encouraging, especially for those who are watching the field from the outside. Tell me a little bit about the Fachhochschule, because I went to university. I don't have a clear picture. What is the studies on the Fachhochschule like?
I mean, you have the big differences. You have a clear schedule. So you have your schedule, and you have to be through within 3 or 4 years. You can repeat 2 semesters, but that's the time you have. You don't have more time than that. But I realized that I need that tough schedule. And I think it was also, for me, it was the best, because I learned from scratch. The Hello World in Turbo-Pascal was not the first lines of code I ever wrote. And I mean, I had HTML at HBLA, but honestly, HTML is not coding. So it doesn't really count. Yes, you have the strict, and they also, I think it's positive. The positive thing is that you have you have a group, you have your class, and that is what stays with you your whole life, and you have more like this identification with the school. So when I meet people now, which also went to FH Hagenberg, there's immediately some basic grounds, because I mean of the school, and it's in Upper Austria, with nothing around, on a tiny hill. So you have to know each other, and you had the same struggles, not finding something to eat on Sunday, for example. But I think that's the difference between university and the Fachhochschule.
Yeah, I hear you. I think it's a question of community. University is more dispersed, and there you have this group of people where you work with. I assume that you had to move close to Hagenberg as well, and you stayed somewhere close to the campus, which gives you a completely different experience than going to university. Well, that sounds amazing, actually.
And I think it depends on the people, because someone is good in structuring the time on their own and learning. And for me, I studied afterwards at TU Wien for a short term, but I realized that the Fachhochschule is more something for me. And I think there are just different types of people, so you have to find just the type you learn best. It's definitely easier on the Fachhochschule because you have a group of people, so you have someone to learn with, to do the homework with, and you don't have to find them like at university.
I can relate to that, because I went to university and I had all these problems of learning how to self-structure. I did not have a community. I came from Nigeria. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any learning groups. And it took me way longer than it would have if I had, all the structure around there and a clear idea of how to address all these things. So yeah, definitely. It is a certain character and also certain circumstances that will let you thrive at university. And it's not easy. And I do actually feel for everyone who starts, because it's a big change in your life.
It is.
Yeah. So cool. So then you were done with the Fachhochschule, and how did you land at SBA Research? Did you just go and apply for jobs, or?
No, actually, I had a friend at the Red Cross where I was a paramedic. And he worked at SBA, and I was looking for an internship for I think 3 months, because afterwards I went to Australia for 7 months. And yeah, that's why I started there, and I loved it so much that I came back. I just wanted to add something, because I totally forgot before. You asked how I ended up at software engineering. By accident. I thought about maybe studying math or something related. And then my ex-boyfriend went to that Fachhochschule, and he liked it so much that I thought, yeah, why not? Let's give it a try. And that's how I ended up. And I have to be honest, a lot of women I talked to, which are in IT, ended up there by accident.
And it does make sense, because if you don't grow up within that sphere, you have no clue that this even exists or what exists. So having someone like your ex-boyfriend who does something before you and enjoys it and gives you a glimpse of that world can entice you to actually join. And before that, you would not have known. So and which brings me to something that I just remembered, because you are obviously working on bringing more women in tech and making tech more visible. You did this very interesting survey, We Are Not Aliens. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that? Because I'm
happy to. So we had at the beginning of the year, we had a conference, and we tried out the first time a women's session, and there you could write us a text at the registration what you like, what you're interested in, and what you would like to hear at the session. And we got a lot of response, and also a lot of response like, how do we get more women into IT? And I was shocked and curious at the same time, because these were all women applying for registering for the session. They wanted to know how to get more of us into IT. So I was sitting on the couch and at an evening, and it was, I think, 3 days before International Women's Day, and I thought, yeah, like, why not? Let's try doing my first survey, and it kicked off. So yeah, I'm still fascinated about how it worked out. And I just wanted to, or I did collect stories of women in IT. What was the first contact like, and where was it? The usual, like, what tips would you give a 15-year-old? Also, what do you love most about your job? Then networks, because I was curious about the whole network thing. And the job title, because I wanted to just show women and girls how diverse these job titles are and what you can do in IT. It's so broad. I think for me, it's the broadest field you can work in, because you have so many options and so many ways you can go. And it doesn't mean when you start here that you end up like on the road here. You can take turns, and that's what I love about it, and that's what I realized the other women love about it as well. And I really I was sitting I was at the couch reading the first answers. I got goosebumps, and then I realized what I do love so much about the IT. It was fascinating.
Yeah, that would have been one of my next questions, what you love about your job. So
Ooh, tough one. What do I love about my job? I have a lot of freedom, I have to admit. And one part is that I work at a research center. So I try to bring together like the researchers with their proposals and their research projects with companies, because that's what you need to get a funding. And it's not that easy, because research for a researcher means something different than research for a company. So a company wants to have a prototype afterwards, but that's not really like it works, because the result of a research project most of the time is a prototype about 3 to 5 years before it can go to market. And they're finding ways how to still work together, because research kind of needs the real world problems. And finding companies who are like innovative enough to see the potential. So that's one part of my job, and I really do like that. And what else do I do? At the moment, a lot of women in IT. So trying to raise questions, trying to bring people together. I think that's what I love most. And it's more, yeah, I think it doesn't matter what the topic is. I always see myself at this communication mid-level to communicate between the end user, the user, and the developer, when you see this from the developer side. So I think that's what I like, and I think I'm quite good at it as well.
I know that you're also passionate about security, and you're the co-founder of the Security for Dev conference. How does that play into the whole job role?
I mean, security is a big part of who we are at SBA. And we are a research center, as I said, and it's our responsibility to do knowledge transfer and raise awareness, because I mean, we are in a digital world, and it's becoming more and more digital, but it doesn't work when you don't think about security. I mean, you know that it's that's one part. So security awareness is very important for us. And because we see the problems, and we know where the data leaks are, and where the problems are, and where the design problems are, for example. And yeah, it's like for that, it was also more like a kind of accident, because we had a talk at a conference, at a big one, and we hosted a security track, so half day, and I was impressed how many people were there. So there were so many people there that I thought, yeah, let's do a whole conference about it. And I think it was a good choice. And then it was some colleagues joined the project, and the project team found each other, and it's our baby. of all of us.
Yeah, makes absolute sense as well. I mean, security is such a big topic at the moment, and I can understand why so many people came to that half-day track. I mean, so, I'm also a great, not fan of security, but very interested in security, and I appreciate that you're doing your part of making people more aware of the whole topic, because the only way we can actually increase security is bringing everybody onto the table and making them aware that what their part in the whole story is.
And we try to increase or even eliminate the barriers. So I know that a lot of people, developers, whether they're not interested in it or they're afraid or something in between. So we are really trying to showing them that it's not hard to start. And I mean, that curve when you go to the development time, that when you think security beginning, it's not that much of a cost, and when you at the end of the development getting exponentially high. So we are normally here, so we are doing the pen testing. And a colleague of mine, he's also in the Sec4Dev team. He was, I think, last year. It was his, and he's at the company for 10 years now. He had one of his first project where he joined at the beginning of at the architectural phase of the project, and he was so happy. And I think it's 2029. That can't be. I mean, why? And what we also really like and enjoy about the conference is we have some companies where just nearly the whole dev team came. So we have from the trainees till the seniors and the architects and the team leads and the security people. So we have all of them there, because for them it's like that everyone hears the same, speaking afterwards more or less the same language, and also having a social event together. So that's what we love to see.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. And it's totally true. When you already start thinking about security in the beginning, it's cheaper than when you have to change stuff at the end. And
yesterday I talked to a friend, and the funny thing, it's kind of similar when you think about health. When you invest in your health at the beginning or just during the year all the time, and you think, or you try to exercise and eat more or less healthy and do your doctor's appointment, it's not that much of an effort. But when something went wrong, it's going that.
Very true.
And it's the same.
Yeah, it's a very good metaphor. If you have to fix something, it's always more expensive and more hard than if you just don't let it run out of course from the beginning. Yeah, so that's a good picture there. Yeah. Talking of things going wrong, is there anything you struggled with during your journey, or was it just smooth sailing? I mean,
good question. Yes, at my first project, or I think it was one of the first projects, we were a very, very small dev team, and I did struggle with my colleague back then. It was, I think, a cultural thing, and he was this kind of dev who had a problem or one use case, and he went totally into deep. And I tried to have the big picture in mind and the project schedule and stuff like that. And then these roles developed that I tried to do the project management, and he's more of the back-end dev lead. But he didn't do it well.
Yeah, I think that reflects on what I see as one of the differences also between men and women, because women try to communicate first before they start doing something, and men tend to just dive in and right into the middle of everything and start solving the problem, which is, in my opinion, not useful in modern IT. I think that is the reason why women are so good at IT, because they understand that communication comes first before actually doing any coding or whatever. But that's a very specific topic about, I think, and it's also true for most things nowadays. No single person can actually solve a problem anymore. So you have to be able to work with other people, communicate effectively. So yeah, I can imagine.
Or maybe take your time. It doesn't change anything if you take 1 or 2 hours before just starting and taking a close look at the problem, taking a look from different angles, and then agreeing on one way to go or one way to trying to out, and then just starting.
Very true. And now comes the usual question, which you probably anticipated, and that is your recommendations for young women who want to come into the field or who want to switch into the field.
The most often answer I got at the survey, and I just can't only underline multiple times, just do it. Don't anyone tell you that you're not capable because you're a woman or because you're not techy enough. Just try it out, and you can't break anything. You can't delete the internet. Just try it out and click on every button and just see what happens. And what I love about the current time is, I mean, it's maybe not that easy to find out what you really want to do, but there's so many options to trying it out. So there are free courses for coding, free hackathons. There are a lot of networks where you maybe find girls and women who are in a similar position or having the similar interests. And use LinkedIn and just try to find people who are like-minded and ask them. Not being afraid to ask, always ask, and talk about it. Because when you talk about it, and you don't have to know the people. You're at the party and you're talking to someone and you're telling them, because most of the time much easier when you don't know the people, telling them what you're interested in or what you saw, what you read, and what you find cool. The possibility that that person can recommend you some contacts to talk to is very high.
Yes, very, very good points. Do it is the first one.
Yes,
internet is your friend. There's so much to learn there, and network, and don't be afraid to ask. I think that's those are the most important points, and I have also heard most of those things here in my interviews, because and I would underline every single one of them. It's so important to understand that nobody is the boss of you, and if you want to do something, you can just do it, and even if you fail, it doesn't matter. It's your life, and you can get up and try something else. I think that's the other thing. You don't have to be successful immediately. You don't have to know everything immediately. So
and you're definitely gonna learn something from that, even if you fail.
True.
And also the part don't be afraid to ask. That's also one of the things I remind myself in my daily work as well. So if I need some help, it doesn't matter if it's maybe personal or if it's also business related. I just call the people and ask, and be straight in front and say, if you can't help me, please just say so. It's totally fine, but I had to try, and nobody's mad at you. So.
Yeah, very true. The whole issue of self-rejection, saying no to yourself before you even asked, is a big one. Because I think people underestimate how helpful everyone really is. Just and what can go wrong if they say no? They say no. Maybe someone else will say yes. Yeah.
And if you do it with a smile and be honest, it's much, much easier.
Yeah, true. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for all your insights and your stories, Stephanie. Is there anything else you would like to share with our viewers, or?
I had one, but I forgot.
Oh. Well, okay. Maybe you'll remember, and you send me a note, and I can put it in the description under the video.
Yeah, I think it's probably the network.
Yeah.
I had last story about the networking.
Oh yeah, please.
My last probably 9 to 10 years, I didn't understood the meaning of networks, and especially female networks, and I didn't want to go there. But till I did the survey and put a lot of time into the whole woman in IT topic, I realized how powerful they are. And I mean, there are so many out there. So at my survey, I found 68 different networks about IT. So it's from coding to data science to just networking to STEM. So there's so many out there. And you just have to find the one which fits you. But if you have found them, they're very, very, very powerful.
Yeah. I would definitely agree. And the last like 14 months have been like a mecca of online networking with all these teams. And I also met so many new women, and it's so important. I think we underestimate what a good network can do for you.
Yeah. I mean, we at the kind of
true. We met through a network. Yeah. Wonderful. So thank you, Stephanie. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day.